Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back, my dear students in grade 9 and our sons abroad. Today, inshallah, we will start the first part in the second term part of the story A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. The title of that chapter is Sound Medical Advice. Let's start with the summary of chapter 10, the first chapter in the second term part of the story. Dr. Manette relapses. If we ask a question here, why do you think that Mr. or Dr. Manette relapsed? There are two reasons for his relapse. The first reason is that he discovered that his son-in-law, Charles Darnley, is related to Evermond family. The second reason is that the beloved daughter, the one who used to care for him or take care of him, will leave him alone, and she is married to Charles Darnley. At Lucy's wedding, Dr. Manette's face appeared happy, although his face was covered with deadly fear when he met Charles earlier that morning. After Charles and Lucy had left for their honeymoon, شهر العسل, Mr. Lorry saw that same fear return to Doctor's face. نفس مسحة الخوف بدأت تظهر على وجهه مرة أخرى. Shortly after the doctor went to his room to rest, Miss Pross heard a low sound of hammering. She rushed into the doctor's room, then came out crying to Mr. Lorry. All is lost. He doesn't know me, who I am, and he's gone back to making shoes. He returned back to the tools of making shoes and began to work again. For 9 days, the doctor was again a shoemaker. And for the first time in his life, Jervis Lorry took time off from Tellson's Bank to help Miss Pross bring the doctor's mind back. On the 10th day, however, Mr. Lorry found the shoemaker's bench put aside and the doctor in his reading chair. He began to recover. بدأ يستعيد توازنه مرة أخرى. Mr. Lorry discusses the doctor's case with him. Mr. Lorry pretended he needed medical advice. تظاهر إنه هو محتاج نصيحة طبية because he is a doctor for a friend of his, but in fact he was talking about the doctor's case. That was a trick that Mr. Lorry had done to trying to make or to help Dr. Manette to recover again. Mr. Lorry was trying to awaken his friend's mind and let him know about his problem. After Mr. Lorry had explained the case of his assumed friend, صديقه المزعوم, Dr. Manette said, I believe something caused your friend to remember the circumstances that led to the first instance of this strange behavior. Mr. Lorry asked Dr. Manette if they should take away the tools of that friend so that he might not relapse again, and Dr. Manette agreed. سألوا هل ممكن نشيل الأدوات اللي هي بتذكروا بهذا الماضي الأليم؟ Dr. Manette وافق. يبقى وكأنه هنا he wanted to take approval, indirect approval from Dr. Manette to take away these tools that always reminded him of his old suffering. When Dr. Manette was finally strong enough to go out, Mr. Lorry and Miss Pross went into his room and destroyed the shoemaker's tools. Lucy and Donny came back. The first person who came to visit Lucy and Donny after they had come back was Sidney Carton. He wanted to be a friend of the family and have the permission to visit them often. Lucy and Donny agreed to accept him as a friend. وافقوا إن هم يقبلوه كصديق للعائلة. Lucy pitied his condition and said, "His heart is bleeding and we must be kind to him. He is capable of gentle things, good things, even great things." هو قادر على أن يفعل أشياء نبيلة وأشياء عظيمة. After some years, Lucy gave birth to a little girl. Sidney visited the family often and brought little Lucy gifts and played with her for hours. During these visits, Carton never smelled from wine. On one of the hot nights of July 1789, little Lucy was 6 years old, and Mr. Lorry came with the news that the revolution had broken out in France. بدأت الثورة في فرنسا. Let's see the questions. Why did Mr. Lorry take time off the bank, خد أجازة من البنك, for the first time in his life, and what does this show about his character? Mr. Lorry took some time off the bank for the first time in his life to help Miss Pross bring the doctor back to his mind. This shows that he is a devoted friend. هو صديق مخلص. Why did Dr. Manette relapse and become a shoemaker once more? Give two reasons. أعطي سببين. إيه سبب الانهيار الصحي الذي حدث لدكتور مانيت؟ هات سببين. It was a shock for him to know that Charles Donny was the son of the Marquis Saint Evermont. كان صدمة بالنسبة له أن يعرف أن تشارلز خطيب بنته أو زوج بنته هو ينتمي لأسرة إيفرموند التي كانت سبب في دخوله السجن سابقا. And it was a shock for him to be departed from Lucy once more. أن هو سوف يعيش مرة أخرى بعد أن تغادره لوسي للذهاب مع زوجها. What did Mr. Lorry pretend and why? تظاهر بإيه؟ He pretended he needed some medical advice for a friend of his. He did so to awaken the doctor's mind and let him know about his problem. What was Dr. Manet's opinion about the case of Mr. Lorry's friend? كان رأيه إيه في قضية أو في مسألة صديق دكتور مانيت? He believed that he relapses when he remembers his first suffering and the reasons that led to that suffering والأسباب التي كانت سبب معاناته. For the sake and the sake of his daughter, I beg your help. Comment. Mr. Lorry said this to Dr. Manette. He pretended he needed some advice for a friend of his, but in fact he was discussing the doctor's case in order to help him understand his problem when he is out of his mind. His daughter or even someone else might have said or done something to make him remember events that happened before his first period of suffering. Comment. Dr. Manette said this to Mr. Lorry, who was trying to awaken the doctor's mind. كان يريد أن يحيي ذاكرته about his problem. The doctor believed that such cases of relapse only occur when the friend remembers his old suffering. عندما يتذكر معاناته القديمة. But doesn't keeping the forge and tools make him think all the more about that awful past? If they were gone, wouldn't his fear go to comment. طبعا هنا مستر لوري ادعى ان صديقه ده كان blacksmith حداد, and he's still keeping a forge and the tools of making this for this that help him in that profession اللي هي مهنة الحداد. Mr. Lorry and said this to Dr. Manet while he was discussing the case of his assumed friend, صديقه المزعوم. Mr. Lorry wanted to know that what would happen to the doctor if they destroyed his show-making tools so as to help him not to remember his days of suffering. وكأنه يريد أن يأخذ منه approval and direct approval to take away his tools of making shoes. يعني عايز ياخد منه موافقة غير مباشرة لتحطيم أو للتخلص من أدوات صناعة الأحذية التي يحتفظ بها في غرفته. ودائما تذكره بأيام المعاناة التي أمضاها في السجن. His heart is bleeding and we must be kind to him. He is capable of gentle things, good things, even great things. These words, of course, were said by Lucy Manette to her husband, Charles Darnay, so as to ask him or to beg him to accept Sidney Carton as a friend for the family. Lucy said this to her husband. She was asking him to show more kindness to Mr. Carton, reminding him that he was weak in his misery and they were strong in their happiness together. In her name, then let it be done. Who said this to whom? Dr. Manet said this to her, to Mr. Lorry. يعني هنا كان بيقول له علشان خاطر الراجل اللي انت بتتكلم عنه دون صديقك المزعوم اللي عنده بنت, لأجل خاطر هذه البنت تخلص من أدوات الحدادة التي يحتفظ بها. Who is meant by in her name? طبعا كان يقصد هنا عشان خاطر Lucy. Lucy, the daughter of Mr. Lorry's friend. What were they speaking about? They were discussing what would happen if they took away the tools of Mr. Lorry's disturbed friend. What is meant by let it be done? ليكن ذلك أو لتفعل ذلك. Let it be done means, okay, take away the tools for the sake of that friend's daughter. And I want you, my dear students, to read these extra questions and try to find answers for them and write your comments. If you find any difficulties, write any comments in after you watching the video. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and till we meet again in the next chapter, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.